was, folks. That's why I was late getting started here. Is I was
I can't see you've gone live.
They matched up and all that. So it looks like they do. It looks with the exception that your version, Paul, seems to be 5 seconds longer, but I don't think that's going to matter to me adding lyrics over it. So, but otherwise it seems to match up for the most part. So, yeah.
Well, I can tell you why that is. It's because you can't just come straight in. So I had to add those 4 drum beats at the start.
Right. So that's true. That's not on the original one. So that could be a whole reason why. So otherwise it seems like, it lines up.
But don't worry, I can remove them in my software.
I can remove them in my editor as well. So it's not a big deal.
There you go. Excellent. Do you want a bit more bass? It's all about the bass.
It sounded pretty good, but we could probably use a little more. Who knows? Anyway.
Well, I could. Well, it's an acoustic bass, but I could sort of double track an electric bass as well.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. I mean, look. The main thing is so that you can sing along with it, and give us hopefully something better than "God Save Our Ears." I mean, "God Save the Queen."
Yeah. Right.
That would be the name of the game, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll be there to bust my balls.
I don't know where you get that impression from. I noticed.
Seeing this dark and no faces, folks. Here, hold on. Let's give the people what they want. Our ugly faces.
Well, it's funny because I got
hello. Ugly faces. But the reason why you were looking at a document is because that's what we're going to be reading from. This started over on Paul's channel earlier, folks. You guys, those of you who were over there on Paul's channel, we started talking about this article. Oh, well, we started with one article about the forensic expert that went nuts during the interview or whatever. So anyway, it led into us going into this article here, which is talking about a lot of the past of Mr. Mike West and Mr. Hain or Dr. Hain in Mississippi. And so anyways, that's what we're doing. So that's why we're looking at a document. All right.
And I was just going to mention that I noticed in a message, a thing you put on Facebook, you said something, and Tracy Keogh came back with a comment, and then she qualified that by saying, "Oh, it's okay, she's just messing with you." To which I put a like, and I said, "Look, Tracy, just you join the queue."
Right.
Back of the queue, Tracy. There's a whole queue of people.
Yep.
Winding the dude up.
No, everybody's got to. No, I like the one that I was responding to Larry Elder about the flushing.
Yes.
That's just like, it's like they're all like up in arms about somebody flushing a toilet. How about Brendan Dassey, you assholes? Anyway, never mind.
Well, it reminded me of a scene in is it Naked Gun? When Nielsen goes to Lou and he's got the microphone on.
Oh right, yeah.
Right.
I do recall something about that. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I do recall something about that. So, hi, Penn. Hey, Mark. How's it going? Nothing but a stump. That would be Rhonda. And let's see who else we got here. Linda, hello, how you doing? Dark Side, how's it going? Sharon, how's it going? Lil Barb, Cherie, how's everybody doing?
Penelope Muldoon.
Yeah.
Of course, this is a good time for Aussies. This is great for them. This is especially for you, Australia, by the way.
In there, you got the Hod, Penelope.
Yeah.
All right. Make sure you guys watch the Scott Davis video before it gets blocked in Australia. Yeah.
Somebody was saying that they haven't been able to find any videos that you've had blocked, but that's because they wouldn't be there. But there have been some that have been blocked, haven't there?
Yeah, there's a few of them. Any that mention a certain person's name, and stuff get blocked.
Yeah.
And it's as I said, I'm not in there making unfounded accusations. I'm there showing people the phone records, and it's like, yeah, that's what happened.
Hmm. Yes, it's not like you're making anything up.
Right. So, all right, let me plug these
Exactly.
in real quick. All right. Beauty. What does that mean? Anyways. All right. So here we go. Continuing from what we were talking about, obviously, it was talking about a lot of things about, Hain and West and the fact that their work was becoming more and more suspect. You can see that if I scroll up, where it's talking about, well, somewhere up here where it said that their cases, the critics against them and the methods they were using began to pile up. All right, so a similar video surfaced in the case of Leigh Stubbs, which the Huffington Post reported on last year. Stubbs was convicted in Mississippi in 2001 of assaulting Jeanette Kimberly Williams in what prosecutors hinted may have been a quarrel between lovers. West claimed that he matched bite marks on the victim's hip to Stubbs' teeth, and also testified that lesbians were more likely to bite one another during domestic disputes. Boy, that sounds like a dangerous statement to make. So,
Dickens is he on the face?
It's like I said, dude. He seems to want to spend more time talking about drinking high life and smoking cigarettes than he wants to talk about anything else in the Innocence Files. But anyway,
the thing is, I can't help thinking about some of those famous incidents where, sporting incidents, there was Mike Tyson, wasn't there, that bit part of the ear off one of his opponents in the ring.
Vander Holyfield, yeah.
Yeah, and there's also, you'll not be familiar with this, but in the world game of football, Suarez of Liverpool, he got banned for about 6 months because he bit an opponent in a game playing for Liverpool.
Right.
And it's he'd done it before. That was the best thing. He'd done it before, so it's not unknown, is it? So anyway,
right. Okay. So moving on here to the next paragraph. The videotaped examinations in the Duncan and Stubbs cases show that at best West was committing malpractice, tampering with evidence, and desecrating a corpse.
Yeah.
Woo! In the Stubbs case, West may have committed assault since he performed his analysis on the alleged victim while she was comatose. At worst, West was using dental molds of the defendants in these cases to create the bite marks he would then testify prove the defendant's guilt. Who?
I mean, that's almost like you get somebody's DNA and you plant it. You get somebody's teeth and you press them on the victim.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like they're suggesting he did. So,
yeah,
right. In response to the Stubbs video, Attorney General Jim Hood told a local TV station that he had assigned Assistant Attorney General Marvin Sanders to investigate a number of cases involving West. The first time state officials had spoken of opening any such inquiry into his work, but it appears to have been little more than talk. When asked about that investigation at a subsequent hearing in the Stubbs case, Sanders said his investigation had consisted of a Westlaw search, basically the legal equivalent of a Google search.
I sometimes use Westlaw to find legal documents. It's quite right. Good. I think it was Travis that probably first put me onto it, but
right. Yep,
it's a name that crops up quite regularly.
Right. The litigation in the Stubbs case also unleashed another bombshell. In a deposition taken in 2012, West said, "I no longer believe the bite mark analysis." Hain made a similar pronouncement. Stubbs had been convicted largely based on West's analysis. However, after the court threw out Stubbs' conviction last year because prosecutors failed to turn over an FBI report contradicting West's testimony. Oh, wow. Jim Hood's office announced that it will seek to try Leigh Stubbs again. The state now argues in Stubbs and other cases not that West is credible, but that the defendants have already argued the issue and lost, and therefore are procedurally barred from raising the issue again.
I knew you'd love that line.
That is got to be one of the douchiest ways to use procedural bar,
You've
or to
lost
even raise the specter of it. Oh my God.
You just have to live with it. I mean, that's basically what some of these prosecutors have said, isn't it? That if you are wrongfully convicted, if you took a plea deal, that's it. You don't get a chance. You don't get a second chance.
Yep. Yeah. The total number of convictions tainted by Haynes or West's testimony could number in the hundreds, possibly higher. Additionally, there are likely cases in which a suspicious death that should have been ruled a homicide was dismissed by Haynes as a suicide or a death by natural causes. Civil rights groups have long had suspicions about Haynes' autopsies on people who have died in police custody, for example, or of possible lynchings that were ruled to be suicides. Okay, in other words, they think Haynes was covering up for the police. Yeah. Haynes and West have also testified in numerous civil cases, and West has applied his bite mark theories to custody disputes. All right. Finding Catherine Mabry's killer. That's where this all started, folks. By the way, this whole article, when we started over on Paul's channel earlier today, it was all the search for justice for Miss Kathy Mabry. So that's why I just thought I'd point that out, because there was a bit of a space in between. You guys might have been over listening to Sharon and Captain Borax talk about Ted Bundy, so there's just a little refresher what this was all about in the first place. All right, here we go. Ready, Paul?
Yeah.
All righty, here we go. In 2007, Tucker Carrington moved from Washington, D.C. to Oxford, Mississippi, to open the Mississippi Innocence Project, which was started in part with funding from best-selling author John Grisham. A couple of years later, as Carrington began to learn about the central role Haynes and West played in the state's criminal justice system, his office started assembling dossiers on the two men and filing relief petitions in the cases in which their testimony may have had an impact on a guilty verdict. So far, the office of Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood has opposed Carrington's office in court in every one of these cases. Innocence Project attorney Will McIntosh first heard about Mabry in January of 2011 from Powell, who had since retired and was working in private practice as a defense attorney. McIntosh contacted the Humphreys County Clerk Office, which faxed him a copy of the docket, a list of Mabry's cases procedural history. A list of the Mabry's cases procedural history. Yeah. That wasn't much to go on because the Mississippi Innocence Project's small team was busy at the time with other cases and broader investigation into Haynes and West. They didn't immediately follow up. But the following August, at the Lowndes County courtroom in Columbus, Mississippi, Powell was again chatting about Haynes and West and the latest in the Stubbs cases. This time with Andre DeGruy, who heads up Mississippi's Office of Capital Defense Counsel. In that conversation, Powell again casually mentioned the Mabry case. A few days later, DeGruy mentioned Powell's comments in passing during a conversation with Carrington. West had testified in numerous other cases over the years, including the Stubbs case, that his method of bite mark analysis had never been wrong. Yet it had clearly been wrong in the Mabry investigation, in which West had pointed the finger at an innocent man, James Earl Gates. To Carrington, the Mabry case was possibly another opportunity to show that West had knowingly lied on the witness stand. I think that's when we really put two and two together, Carrington says. We realized that not only had West again identified the wrong person, but that this case was still open, and that if there had been primitive DNA testing to clear Gates, there was at least some chance that the biological evidence was still around and could be retested with more modern technology. Carrington first spoke with Powell, who couldn't remember the name of the victim. He reached out to the office of the new district attorney, Kelly Oliver, but never heard back. He finally reached out to Ken Winter, the executive director of the Mississippi Association of Chiefs of Police, and then to Sam Howell, director of the Mississippi State Crime Lab. Howell said there wasn't much he could do without the victim's name and the number the crime lab had assigned to the case. McIntosh went back to the Humphreys County clerk. This time he spoke with Deputy Clerk Sharon Neal, who remembered the case well and said she'd do her best to find the complete file. She found it upstairs in a nasty courthouse attic in a dusty file cabinet with junk all around it. McIntosh writes via email. That file contained enough information to allow Howell to find the case at the crime lab. To everyone's surprise, the biological evidence was still stored at the lab. That was remarkable, Carrington says. The evidence usually gets sent back to the prosecutor or the police department where the DNA evidence isn't necessarily well preserved, especially in a case that hasn't been closed. For whatever reason, in this case, no one asked for it back, so it stayed at the lab. That's because it didn't come back the way they wanted it, and they didn't care. They wanted to lose it. At least that's my case with other wrongful convictions, but anyway, or my observations, but anyway. Howell created a DNA profile of the fingernail scrapings and uploaded it to CODIS, the FBI's DNA database. The program spit back a match. Mabry had been raped and murdered by 37-year-old Michael Johnson, a former resident of Belzoni. There would be no manhunt to track down Johnson, who was already in prison. 5 years after he killed Mabry, he beat a man to death with a hammer in Rankin County, Mississippi. Wow. Sounds like a really nice guy, a really pleasant dude. I'm so glad we missed out on that. Uh-oh, where did Paul go? Anyways, all right. Ken Winter says he's never seen anything quite like the Mabry case. You don't normally see defense attorneys go out of their way to solve a murder like that. I was just tickled to death when I heard that they got him. It speaks to the integrity of Tucker and to that end of that office. When Roseman learned of the results of the Innocence Project's investigation, the first thing he did was call up Judy Mae Wilson. Just the day before, she had put flowers on her daughter's grave. Thank you, Jesus, she said. After hanging up with Wilson, Roseman says he quietly closed the door to his office. At this point in our interview, he stopped talking for a moment and looked away. I just sat at my desk and cried, he says. A lot of things just slipped through the cracks. Roseman says there's little doubt in his mind that if West hadn't effectively ended the investigation, he'd have found Michael Johnson. We knew she had been dropped off with Johnson to get some dope from him about a week before the murder, Roseman says. There were some kids we talked to who we think saw Kathy's killer leave the house. They weren't volunteering anything then, but they were scared. Everybody was scared to talk about anything back then because the crime was so brutal. If a witness is scared, they'll They'll confirm something you already know, but they won't always give you. They won't always give that to you on their own. All right. We are going to go back and talk to the witnesses after we learned Kathy had met with Johnson, but West ended the investigation after just a few days. We never got the chance to get that far. Roseman says that after the charges against Gates were dropped, he continued to investigate the case as best he could, when he could. But after nearly a year, some witnesses were no longer in the area. Many of them were drug addicts, and the ability to identify someone from sight degrades quickly over time. The conventional wisdom, law enforcement officials say, is that the odds of solving a murder are cut in half after 48 hours. A year after putting the investigation on ice due to the mistaken belief that the killer was sitting in a jail cell, the outlook for closing the case seemed dim. But the problem is, though, this case was going to get solved eventually because there was DNA that would eventually be able to be tested by modern techniques and was going to definitively point to somebody. So, so our courts need to get on board with that. And, well, anyway, a lot of things need to really kind of happen. But the biological evidence taken from Mabry was always available. As chief of police and then later as sheriff, Roseman could have ordered the more advanced DNA testing himself, really any time after it had been developed in the early 2000s. In talking to him, it becomes clear that he didn't really understand that more advanced testing was even possible. It's hard to believe he wouldn't know that, but he is a small town that he's from, so maybe. But I got to imagine they still watch CSI and you know, JAG and all that crap in small towns, but maybe not. Maybe they just watch what's it called? American those guys that drive around and buy junk from people.
Yeah, the pawn shop people, aren't they?
Well, they're not pawn shop, but yeah, they're anyway. They drive around in a Sprinter van. Anyway. In some of the poorer, more rural counties in Mississippi, your sheriff or chief of police just doesn't have the resources to keep up with the latest technology, said Ken Winter. They depend on the crime lab, on prosecutors, on state officials to know what's going on. I don't think there's any doubt that Sheriff Roseman wanted to solve this murder. But Winter says a switch in the DA's office, a backlog in the crime lab, and, of course, the mess with Hain and West all worked against solving the case. I think a lot of things just slipped through the cracks. But, of course, the DA's office and the Attorney General had the resources. So why didn't they take up Mabry's case again? I think it's just the old story about the squeaky wheel getting the grease, says Oliver Diaz Jr., a former Associate Justice on the Mississippi Supreme Court. If you have a powerful family, an influential family, pushing the DA, then the case will get some attention. But if there's no one to champion the cause, the case gets buried under other priorities. It's unfortunate, and I don't think it's a problem that's limited to Mississippi. It's just the way things are. In fact, the way forensics are handled in the courtroom has become a persistent problem across the country, not just in Mississippi. Forensic scandals have been erupting at crime labs nationwide over the last decade. Most recently, there was a scandal at the state drug lab in Massachusetts that could affect thousands of convictions. Another drug lab scandal in Nassau County, New York. By the way, the one in Massachusetts is the one, How to Fix a Scandal on Netflix, folks.
Absolutely.
Check that out and get the details on it if you haven't already. That could also hit thousands of cases. And misconduct at the state crime labs in Connecticut and North Carolina that have led to reviews of hundreds of cases, including murder convictions. Currently, there's an ongoing controversy involving the FBI's crime lab, in which analysts were found to have vastly overstated the significance of hair and fiber analysis while testifying in court. That, too, has spurred a review of thousands of cases going back more than a decade. The FBI lab had been considered one of the most elite crime labs in the world.
Are they on about Mr. LeBeau?
Could be.
Yeah.
Maybe. The one difference in Mississippi has been the obstinacy of state officials to acknowledge the problem, whereas other states have addressed forensic scandals with task forces and commissions charged with determining the extent of the problems and, as much as it's possible, undoing some of the damage. The response thus far in Mississippi has largely been to pretend that the problem doesn't exist. I love those kind of politicians. Just act like it isn't happening.
Exactly.
Boy. Stephen Hain is looking good, huh, folks? Yeah.
Again, they didn't allow us to see Mike West, did they, either?
Nope. Hain and his defenders have claimed he has been performing a public service all these years. Oh yeah, when you're saying that male deceased people had you're giving the weight for their ovaries, you freaking Jesus. Anyways, right, moving on. Hey, okay. Working long hours, yeah, okay, maybe too many. Often 7 days per week, maybe too many, to help with the state's continual backup of autopsies due to a lack of other qualified medical examiners. But there's good evidence that this was all by design. One medical examiner who now works for another state medical examiner's office told me in 2007 that when he tried to bid for autopsy contracts in Mississippi in the 1990s, he was told by a county coroner that he'd first need to get permission from Hain. But Hain held no official state position at the time.
Yep.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah, it sounds like he was the gatekeeper, so blows that claim out of the water. When Emily Ward, Mississippi's previous state medical examiner, began to question Hain's practices and credentials in 1993, West circulated a petition among the state's coroners and prosecutors demanding Ward's resignation. It worked. Ward, who was board certified and well respected among her peers, was forced out of office. Her predecessor, Lloyd White, also encountered pushback for attempting to oversee Hain. After Ward, the state didn't hire another official medical examiner for 15 years, essentially giving Hain and West free reign.
Yeah.
Wow. In a recent New York Times article on Hain, former prosecutor and judge John T. Kitchen said, "From a prosecutor's standpoint, I don't know anybody who didn't like him. He was always so helpful and useful to law enforcement." Oh, sure. We all love it when we get the people coming in and saying what we want to hear. You idiot. Oh, my God. Leroy Riddick, a former state medical examiner for Alabama, said in 2007, "All of the prosecutors in Mississippi know that if you want to be sure to get an autopsy results you want, you take the body to Dr. Hain. Critics say that this is precisely the problem. Medical examiners should be impartial expert witnesses, not part of the prosecution's team." And that's true.
In fact, they shouldn't really know anything about the case, should they? It should be some sort of, there needs to be more blind testing,
Everything needs to be blind so that the techs don't even know. They're just testing what's there, and what's there is there.
Yeah, you can't have people like Tom Fassbender telling Sherry Culhane, try and put her in his
garage or trailer, right? Exactly. Yeah. Carrington says Mabry case shows exactly why the state needs to conduct a thorough soup to nuts investigation. Soup to nuts? Really? That's probably the first time I've heard that expression. Soup to nuts investigation of Hain and West. I can't think of a single case in which West has testified where he didn't find a problem. He adds that in cases where West has testified in court, there is usually a record, so his name will at least turn up in legal searches. But in most cases, like Mabry's, and likely many others, there's no such record. "It was just fortuitous that we found this case," Carrington says. Gates' attorney fought the murder charge, but Carrington says the case easily could have gone another way. Gates' attorney could well have told him, "Look, they've got you dead to rights. Plead guilty and maybe they'll go easy on you," he says. Innocent people can often find themselves in that predicament. If he had pleaded guilty, there'd be no record of West's role in the conviction. How many other cases like this are out there? Winter of the Association of Police Chiefs agrees. "I've been telling Jim Hood for years that this calls for that kind of investigation into Stephen Hain and Michael West," he says. "At the very least, we need a bona fide cold case unit that looks for cases like this, and it needs to be done by the people with some integrity, people who are willing to look for open murders, but who will also look for cases where an innocent person may have been convicted." The main reason. The hell? Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
The main reason that hasn't happened is likely because the people with the power to call in such an investigation may have a lot to lose. The fact is, most of the prosecutors in Mississippi have used Hain at one point or another, and many of them have also used West, Winters says. And most of the judges in Mississippi are former prosecutors. The officials with the most authority to acknowledge and address the problem are those who stand to fall hardest should it be fully exposed. Hood, the Attorney General, is a former prosecutor who used Hain in his cases. It sounds like we need to limit the amount of use any one expert can be in one area. I mean, it sounds like part of the problem here is that these guys were involved with so many cases. That was what was keeping it under wraps, that all the prosecutors and judges didn't want to do the right thing on it because they knew they would be implicated in it. So, and that would have been avoided if these guys weren't used so damn much by everybody.
I mean, in the Innocence Files, we hear one of those jurors was it the Lavon Brooks case say that, you know, even though the Ted Bundy expert, Servant, whatever his name was, he came along and said, I disagree 110%, but the jury still went with Fred West. No, not Fred West. I knew I was going to say that. Michael West, because he put on a better show. And what's what's the next thing coming out on Netflix? Trial by Media.
Right.
Which it's just theatre, isn't it? It's just who can put on the best story.
Right. So, okay, the problem extends even to some of the state's defense attorneys. The public defender in Mississippi is usually a part-time position. Many public defenders in the state then make their living in private practice. Many of them specialize in wrongful death and medical malpractice cases. Those cases may require autopsies. And for many years, in most of the state, Hain was the only game in town. Of course he was the only game in town. Who else could be? I mean, they set it up where nobody else could be. You had to get Hain's permission to... That's unbelievable.
Yep.
Certainly many public defenders in the state did and do their jobs well, but the incentive at work is persuasive and unmistakable. Aggressively attack Hain's credibility in your low-paying criminal cases, and you could be putting your livelihood at risk. Yeah. So basically, again, fear.
Yeah.
Diaz has thus far been one of the few state officials to speak up. While on the Mississippi Supreme Court, he wrote a scathing concurring opinion in the Tyler Edmonds case, arguing that Hain should be barred from testifying in the future. In fact, the court had originally voted to uphold Edmonds' 2 hands on the gun conviction until Diaz's dissent convinced several justices to change their minds. Ooh, wow. Nice. Good job, Diaz. I like that. I do. Yep. I like that. That's the feel-good moment of this story, folks. I like it. You know, it's good to have one of those because this thing's been a train wreck so far. So, okay. He has been calling for a thorough investigation of Hain and West and how the state has dealt with expert testimony in this ever since. So that is absolutely brilliant. Good job for him. It's well past time. Someone put together a task force to look into this, he says during the interview. One other Mississippi official who took action was Steve Simpson, who the state's former commissioner of public safety. In 2008, Simpson effectively fired Hain from performing any more autopsies in the state. Simpson, however, was a former judge and prosecutor from the Gulf Coast, one of the few areas of the state that didn't use Hain. I'm sure Commissioner Simpson's motives were pure, Winter says, but it's worth nothing that he had nothing to lose in going after Hain. Well, obviously he's the only one that Hain didn't bully because he had no cases in that judge's court, right? And anyway, oh my God, this is stupid. I get so sick of the way that the state interprets things just because they want to cover their butt. It's so obvious that that's all they're doing. But anyway, Simpson did not respond to requests for comment, but they did talk with the Huffington Post about the issue in 2011. All right, well. If such an investigation does ever happen, it seems unlikely that Hain and West will suffer much in the way of repercussions. I agree. They probably won't. Nothing. Slap on the wrist, if anything. Giving unscientific testimony isn't a crime. A prosecutor would need to show that the men willfully gave false testimony, which is difficult to prove. Both men are currently the targets of lawsuits by Kennedy Brewer and Levon Brooks, as they should be. So far, similar suits have been unsuccessful, although none of the prior suits involved a DNA exoneration. Ooh, well then, good. Let the DNA talk. Let the DNA roll. All right. Currently, Hood is not only seeking to retry Lee Stubbs, he's defending 3 death penalty convictions, 1 on questionable forensic evidence, 2 involving Hain, Jeffrey Harvard, and Devin Bennett, and the other involving both Hain and West, Eddie Lee Howard. It's just unconscionable, Carrington says. The state cheated by using West. And even in the unlikely event that they actually believed him at trial in these cases, there's no question they're knowingly cheating by continuing to defend those convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and the fact, we'll get to that afterwards. Meanwhile, well-intentioned public officials like Roseman are left with the task of explaining to people like Judy Mae Wilson why her daughter's killer remained free, because Roseman and others were duped by Hain and West. Wilson sits in her house beneath a big wall covered with photos of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She has taken down most of the pictures of Mabry. She'll never forget her daughter, of course, but she also doesn't need the constant reminder. There are just two still hanging, and Mabry's image in each is small enough that she has to pull them down from the wall to point out what her daughter looked like. It had been so long, I just thought they were going to wait until everyone stopped talking about it, thinking we'd forget. She says of the investigation. They made a mistake. Seemed like they were just planning to sweep it under the rug. That's exactly what they were planning to do. James Earl Gates died a few years ago. He dropped dead of a heart attack while working on his car. His death was yet another unexpected jolt, one of many unpleasant reminders about the murder that have blindsided Wilson over the years. In the coming months, she'll get more reminders once Michael Johnson is charged, and if he doesn't plead guilty, as he's tried. She says she'll attend the trial, and if he's convicted, she'll attend the sentencing. She says that maybe once all of this is over, she can start thinking about closure, finally safe in the knowledge that there won't be any more unpleasant surprises. I'm glad they found out who did it, she says, but I'm tired.
Yeah.
I understand. And that looks like the end of the article. All right. Well, we haven't completely bored everybody. We got 15 people left.
Oh, well, I think you started off with 5, so that's that's doing well, dude. Do you want to go on and do the bit of the deposition?
What bit of the deposition?
Well, the other article I sent you. Remember, this is.
I can't open that one. It's a Wall Street Journal, and I'm not going to subscribe to it. So you'll have to run that one.
Well,
it won't let me look at it without paying for it. I'm not paying for it.
It must be that it's different in this country then.
Must be. But it won't let me look at it.
Well, do you want me to try that then?
Yeah.
Because I thought I sent it to you. Did I send them both to you?
You sent them both, but I can't open the Wall Street Journal one.
Okay.
I mean, I can open it, but I can't really look at it or see it.
Well, actually, what I did, of course, was I actually put it on my saved it, didn't I, to my document. So let me see if I can, as long as I don't crash. And I thought we'd like a picture of Michael West there to remind us which claim we're on about.
Yep.
Now, if I just go in here, hopefully I can get that up for us. Yeah. Okay. Expert witness goes nuts during questioning.
That's the one.
Uh-huh. Do you want to do the? Do I have to screen share my side?
Yeah. Right. There it is.
Okay.
All right. There you go.
Here we go. Well, you keep going. You keep going. You're doing a grand job. We'll keep you going in Dr. Pepper.
Okay. There we go. Oh, hey, there it is. All right. You got to scroll down, dude. There you go.
I know, but that's.
Is your computer going slow again?
No. Don't you start criticizing my computer. There we go. Yes, that's it. Ready now. Okay.
All right. Expert witness goes nuts during questioning for Mississippi death penalty case. I've been reporting on the crazy death investigation system in the Mississippi for about 10 years now. We passed this, go down.
And then it said to fully appreciate.
Yes. 20 minutes or so, which ended up being an hour. A few years ago is pretty thorough. Or try this one, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But here's a rough summary. In the early to mid 1990s.
So.
Okay, there we go. 1990s. Michael West became a rock star in the world of forensics. West claimed to have developed techniques that he and only he could perform. According to West, these techniques could both identify bite marks on human skin that no other medical specialist could see, and then match those marks to one person, to the exclusion of everyone else on the planet. West helped put lots of people in prison. He soon expanded his repertoire and became an expert witness in a variety of forensic specialties, including a few he claimed to have invented. In addition to bite mark analysis, West also testified over the years as a trace metals expert, wound pattern expert, gunshot residue expert, gunshot reconstruction expert, a crime scene investigator, blood spatter expert, tool mark expert, fingernail scratch expert, liquid splash patterns expert, and video enhancement expert. Holy crap, the guy wears a lot of hats. Yep. He once claimed he could match the bite marks in a half-eaten bologna sandwich found at a crime scene to the teeth of the primary suspect. Not DNA, mind you, the tooth marks in the bread. Right. When there would clearly would be DNA there. Right. We're going to rely on the bite marks in the bread. No, that's stupid. Anyway. In another case, West even offered the jury his expertise about how lesbian couples resolve conflict. Right. That's the one, folks, where they usually resolve conflicts with biting each other.
Yes.
So, according to Michael West. Thank you so much, Sharon, for my Dr. Pepper fun. Oh, you're very kind.
She was telling me I should have put my my banner up asking for donations for your Dr. Pepper fund.
I keep telling all of them that you're working on Dr. Pepper. You're trying to get them as a sponsor. So I told them I'll let them know as soon as you let me know if Dr. Pepper ever gets back to you. So anyway, okay. Though he primarily testified in Mississippi and Louisiana, prosecutors in at least 8 other states retained him as an expert witness. As early as 1994, there were questions about West's credibility. He was the subject of several skeptical media profiles, including a Newsweek and an ABA journal, or by Newsweek, the ABA journal, and 60 Minutes. He has been investigated by and either resigned or was expelled from three separate professional organizations back in the early 2000s. Yeah, well, judging by that dude's high life habit. Anyway, one attorney tricked West into matching photos of bite marks on a murder victim to the dental palette of the attorney's own private investigator.
Oh, we read about that one as well.
By the late 1990s, West was considered something of a quack, even within the already dubious forensic specialty of bite mark analysis. Yet Mississippi and Louisiana prosecutors continued to use him. Mississippi and Louisiana trial courts kept allowing him to testify, and Mississippi and Louisiana appellate courts kept upholding the crazy things he would claim on the witness stand. Right. In 2007, Kennedy Brewer and Lavon Brooks were exonerated of the rape and murder of two little girls in Nooksavi County, Mississippi. The first crime occurred in 1990. Local police suspected Brooks for the sexual assault and murder of a 3-year-old girl. West's bite mark voodoo, and testimony from also controversial medical examiner Stephen Hain were the main evidence against Brooks, who was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The next little girl was raped and killed less than 2 years later. Just a few miles away, this time, police zeroed in on Brewer as the killer. And once again, West's bite mark matching was the main evidence against him. Brewer was
convicted
and sentenced to death after spending a combined 30 years in prison. The two were released when DNA testing in the Brooks case pointed to a convicted sex offender named Justin Albert Johnson. He was arrested and admitted to both crimes. In fact, Johnson was briefly a suspect in the first crime, but West excluded him after finding that Johnson's teeth failed to match what West said were bite marks on the victim.
So in other words,
indeed, it's possible there were no bite marks at all. In his confession, Johnson made no mention of biting the little girl. No, it came from the crawdads.
Yeah.
So
his incompetence actually led to the second
right?
murder, didn't it? Really, that's
only he can perform. I mean, dude, there should have been all kinds of red flags going up about this. I can't believe it got that far. But anyway. That still wasn't enough to convince Mississippi officials to take another look at all of the other cases in which West had testified. So, let's move on to the case at the heart, last April's crazy deposition. In 1994, Eddie Lee Howard was convicted for the rape and murder of an 84-year-old woman, mostly due to testimony from Hain and West. Hain didn't initially claim to have seen any bite marks on the victim's body. It was only several days later when then District Attorney Forrest Allgood identified Howard as his chief suspect that Hain recalled seeing marks that could be bites. Allgood is also the prosecutor who convicted Brewer and Brooks. The victim had, by that time, been buried. She was exhumed, and West then performed his magic, claiming to match the alleged bite marks to Howard. Howard was convicted and sentenced to death. As late as 2006, the Mississippi Supreme Court heard appeals on West's testimony in Howard's case. Even while acknowledging West's severe credibility problem, his expulsion from various professional organizations, and his many other transgressions, the majority simply shrugged, writing, "Just because Dr. West has been wrong a lot does not mean without something more that he is wrong here." Oh my God. Remarkably, West actually disclaimed bite mark analysis in 2012, sort of, although he still defends his own work. So he claims bite mark analysis is a BS field, but his is okay. His bite mark analysis is good. No. Oh my God. This dude is such a piece of work. After years of fighting, Howard's attorneys were finally able to have the DNA testing done on the knife allegedly used to kill the woman Howard was convicted of killing. The test showed male DNA but excluded Howard as the source. A rape kit taken from the woman produced no usable DNA. Last year, a state appeals court finally granted Howard's request to reopen several issues in the case, including a challenge to West's credibility. That set up the surreal deposition in April. At that deposition, West was questioned by Chris Fabricant, director of strategic litigation at the Innocence Project of New York. Also present was Tucker Carrington, director of the Mississippi Innocence Project. Disclosure. Carrington and I are currently co-writing a book about all of this. Oh boy, I want to read that. Howard.
Well, so yeah, that's obviously the author of the article.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's going to be.
They're going to be going a book going into all of this more than this article is going into, I imagine. So yeah, Howard is also represented by Vanessa Potkin. Ah, yes, from the Innocence Files.
Yeah,
Peter Neufeld. Yep, and Dana Delger, all of whom work for the Innocence Project in New York. West frequently has been brash, prickly, and prone to fits of
braggadocio.
On the witness stand. This time he was also belligerent, profane, and combative. He was openly contemptuous of the entire process, which again was at heart about whether or not the state of Mississippi should put a man to death. The transcript records that he belched before one answer. The transcript records records that he belched before one answer. That's the highlight, folks. On 2 occasions, as he grew increasingly annoyed at Fabricant's questions, West offered hypotheticals that involved him killing Fabricant. Whoa! Dude, that guy's unstable. Holy crap. You can read the entire transcript here.
Now, I did try.
But I'd like to point out some highlights.
I couldn't get that to come up. I will try and see if I can get the entire transcript, but it'll probably run to several pages, won't it? You know, like it'll be quite long. Okay, so here we go then.
All right. It began almost immediately as West started the deposition with pouty one-word answers. Here's one such exchange. Dr. West, I see that you have no documents with you. Is that right? Yes. Did you look for any documents before you came here today? No. Did you do anything to prepare for this deposition at all? No. And you realize that we're here about Eddie Lee Howard's convictions. Okay. Well, I'm telling you that it's about Eddie Lee Howard. Do you remember the Eddie Lee Howard case? No. Damn. Dr. West, I'm just going to ask you to flip through this or to take your time with it and just refresh your recollection about the testimony that you gave in this case. I was never more familiar with the case than when I testified on it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's just being a jerk, dude. So you feel? I feel comfortable with the testimony that I gave at that point in time. I still stand. Okay. Okay, but you haven't actually looked at that testimony, though, right? I stand on my testimony. You stand on it. I understand, but I'm just asking you: did you actually look at it? No. No, you have. No, you have. Let's see. No, and you. And have you looked at it since 1992? No. You said earlier that you don't remember what you testified to, but you're saying that you stand by whatever it was. Yes, but you don't know exactly what it is. No. It goes on like that Fabricant later moved to questioning that West had previously undergone about the case of Lee Stubbs, in which West testified as a bite mark expert, a video enhancement expert, and offered his opinions on lesbian violence to boot. It's also a case in which a video recording of West's procedure for analyzing bite marks strongly suggests he actually created the bite marks that he would later attribute to the defendant. There are other similar videos where he does the same thing. Because of West, Lee Stubbs was convicted of assault and sentenced to 44 years in prison. Here's Fabricant. Do you remember that deposition as well? That Mr. Carrington, was that the case of the two lesbians that bit the girl's vagina lip off? That sounds like we're talking about the same case. So, Dr. West, I want to talk about first, in 1992, you were still a coroner. Is that right? Yes. But not in this case. Not in this case, right. Okay, so I was also a moose and a photographer. Okay, right. In your forensic, but it didn't have anything to do with this case. God, he just keeps... anyways. West's memory of the Stubbs case is a revealing glimpse into his psyche. Stubbs was accused and convicted of biting a woman on the thigh, yet West remembered it as a case of the two lesbians that bit the girl's vagina lip off. At the time, West was the elected coroner in his own county, but not in the county where the crime took place. When Fabricant inquired about that, West responded that his being a coroner was as relevant as his membership is to the local Moose Lodge. In other words, pointless because the Moose Lodge is going to want to sell him a drink if he comes in anyway. I don't know. Anyway, Fabricant went on to ask West about his history as an expert witness. During this time, you testified previously that in this case, actually, that you had done about 300 bite marks in cases that you've analyzed and that you've testified on, but that you had worked on in 2000, about 300 bite mark cases. Does that sound accurate? If that's what I testified to, that was my best recollection at the time. Okay. And then you had testified in about 30, and you actually testified in about 30 bite mark matching cases. Does that sound accurate? Yes. It seems low to me. I don't know, but that was, if that's what I testified to, that's just most assured of those questions. 20, 25, 19 years ago. Okay. Anytime you want to remind yourself, we've got the transcripts right here. I don't want to remind myself. Okay. Why is that? This isn't my problem. It's yours. Jeez. Well, there's a man on death row in this case. You might understand that, right? You're telling me the state of Mississippi wants me to execute this guy for killing this woman, and y'all want to cut him loose so he can kill some more? Y'all do what you want. I'm out of it. So, yeah, right.
So what he's doing is he's basically accusing this innocent person, accusing the Innocence Project of being the ones that are at fault because they let guilty people out.
Yeah, right. And that's the only way you can see it. I know. Okay. So, right. That wasn't really what I'm getting at, though. You do want him out, don't you? Jeez. Let's see. Well, we want to make sure that we find the truth. That's what we're looking for. Well, read the transcripts. There's the truth right there. Right. Well, there's more evidence today than there was then. Why? Someone else is accused of this woman's murder? Let's backtrack a little bit, right? Can we do that? Well, I mean, you said there was new evidence about this case. Right. Yeah, there's DNA evidence. You want to read the transcripts now, asshole? And does it exclude your evidence? Yes, it does. Then take it to court. That's why we're here. This is going to be right before we're going to court. I am not an expert on DNA. Right. But it was your testimony that condemned Mr. Howard, and that's why we're here too. No, it was the overall trial that condemned Mr. Howard. I was just part of it. Oh, lovely. Now he's getting all humble. I love it. I think you went too far.
No, this is it. This is it. I haven't gone too far, I can assure you, but I can show you.
Now, okay. Note how flippant West is about all of this. Again, West's testimony was used as key evidence linking an innocent man to a crime scene. He gave similar testimony in other cases that resulted in convictions of people who we now know are not guilty. Yet he doesn't show the slightest bit of regret or reverence for what has happened, only defiance. Later, Fabricant asks West about some of his colleagues in the world of forensic odontology. West has been at odds with the field since he resigned from the American Board of Forensic Pathology in 2006, when he was about to be ousted. When Fabricant asks West about prominent bite mark analyst Richard Silveron, West replies, "I don't know why his mama named him Dick." God, he is something else. When asked about other bite mark analysts, he uses terms like idiot, whore, and fool. He later expounded on Sovereign in particular. Dick's an idiot. Okay. Why do you say that? Because he's an idiot. Can you give me an example of? He doesn't look for the truth. He looks for ego flattering. I saw last year he was testifying and not testifying. He was lecturing. And on his little bio there, he talked about being on 60 Minutes. Well, he wasn't the subject of that article. I was. He was just on 60 Minutes bad-mouthing me. And I'm going, your claim to fame is bad-mouthing someone. He doesn't want to advance the truth. He wants to advance Dick Sovereign. He's an egomaniac. Or he's an egomaniac. Well, but in that right, exactly. I mean, the whole bringing that whole mess up makes you just as bad. Jeez. Unbelievable. All right. 2 comments on this. First, West is still immensely proud of his appearance on 60 Minutes, even though the segment in question was quite critical of him. He still frequently mentions that appearance and depositions, along with his appearance on the Phil Donahue Show and in pages of Playboy and Vanity Fair in the early 1990s. Oddly enough, what coverage of West was related to the Gainesville serial killer murders in 1990. While West did travel to Gainesville and received lots of press coverage for what he claimed was a breakthrough new way to research trace evidence using blue ultraviolet light, he ultimately found nothing of value and played no role in catching the killer. The procedure, which he dubbed the West phenomenon, has since been discredited. Second, it's interesting that West here is describing Richard Sovereign, who himself has implicated suspects who were later cleared, in the same way a lot of people describe Michael West. Fabricant then asks West about his history with the American Board of Forensic Odontology, an advocacy group and a professional organization for bite mark analysts. West was suspended from the group in 1994, then forced to resign in 2006. West attributed it all to a conspiracy theory. Oh, a conspiracy theory? Really? The goodness. I would say the height of my friends career was my resignation letter to the board in 2006. Yeah, that was what you felt best about. Yes. Why is that? It was the purpose of the board was to advance the science, and I felt that my letter of resignation was the best thing I could do to advance the science. Okay. That's an intriguing response. Can you elaborate on that a little? I thought odontology was destroying itself. In what way? Are you familiar with the term agent provocateur? Sure. What's your understanding of that term? I'll tell you mine. An agent provocateur is someone who joins or enters into a group with the purpose of destroying that group. Uh-huh. And I believe we had several members that were agent provocateurs to destroy the board. Oh, yeah? Who do you think those people were? Dick Sauvignon, Greg Golden, Mike Collins, Ian Preddy, and several others. Okay, I don't think Ian Preddy is an ABFO, but you thought he was. Hey, I think he's here to destroy the science. Yes. The deposition continued to devolve. Fabricant later asked West about several cases in which someone convicted based on bite mark testimony was later exonerated. In an exchange about a Massachusetts case involving bite mark analyst Lowell Levine, West just gets weird. While we're looking for that, I want to give you this article about another Lowell Levine case, and maybe you saw it. Let me state this right now. I do not think Lowell Levine killed this woman. Killed someone? I don't think he killed her. I think Eddie Lee Howard killed her. Lowell is innocent. He was in New York. But if you want to bring him in, go ahead. In this exchange, Fabricant and an attorney from Hood's office were arguing about a particular line of questioning. Fabricant argued that his questions were relevant to West's opinion. That when West jumped in, the witness. You know what's relevant to my opinion, Mr. Fabricant? What's that? I said, if you know what's relevant to my opinion, then let me go home and you answer the questions. That's what I'm trying to do right now is, can you read minds? No, I'm not trying to. Try to think what I'm thinking now. Oh, jeez. You're thinking that this guy is a jerk and I want to get out of here. No. It would take 5 years of improvement to get you to a jerk. Oh, God. Okay, let me ask you about you testified previously that sociopath. Okay. Not jerk, but sociopath. God. This is him you got to imagine yourself on a witness stand spouting this crap off, folks. I mean, goodness gracious, dude, this guy. After calling Fabricant a sociopath, West continued to be openly hostile. Here's another exchange. Right. And you testified in the Hain deposition that you regret testifying to absolute certainty in the past. I don't remember that. I mean, if I said it, you ain't got to point it out. Just tell me you testified to it. That's what you testified to. Save us some time. Christ. Okay. And another. And you would not testify to Eddie Lee Howard's matching that bite mark to the exclusion of anybody else on the planet because you don't believe. No, I didn't say that. I said I don't believe in system. My opinion today would probably be a little different than it was back then, but I would have to go back and completely redo the whole thing. And I would cheerfully do that if you retain me and pay me. Ah! Money getting tight there, Mikey? Jesus. Well, let's talk about that. And today, you're not paying. Let's make it sure you're not paying for me today, are you? Would that make a difference in your testimony today? No. It would make a difference in my bank account. But are you paying me for my appearance here today? I'm asking you whether or not your testimony depends on my paying you for it. Or are you just going to talk about the truth here today? No. The truth is I'm not being paid for my services. Right. You are. You're getting paid, aren't you? Are you getting paid? Well, what the hell are you doing here? You don't know either. To the stenographer, honey, you're getting paid, aren't you? Now he's talking to the stenographer. I'm only one in the room not getting paid. With that note, I'm going to take a break and go to the bathroom. Dude. Oh my God, dude. It's like he's literally melting down, dude. It's freaking great. Oh my God, it's hilarious. A man's life is at stake, yet Wes is angry that he isn't being paid to appear at a deposition about his methods. This next exchange offers yet more petulance and provides a great example of Wes' tendency to browbeat his questioner when flustered. Not like King Kratz, I think. I know that you know Vincent DeMeo, right? Yes. And you testified before in the Hain deposition that he was he was at one time also a believer in bite mark analysis. You made reference to his book. I don't remember. Let me see where that is. Do you understand the difference between I stand by what I testified and I don't remember? Yes. Do you know the difference between those two statements? The reason I do. I'm sorry. Well, then why are you beating me to death with this? I told you if it's in the transcript, I stand by it. If I remember it, I don't remember what I said I had for breakfast 2 years ago, but I do believe I ate eggs. Okay. The reason that it's important, shall I explain it to you? Yeah. Okay. Is that if you just say that I can't remember, then I can't ask you a question about what you said. Okay, well, I don't remember. Right. You shouldn't have waited 20-something years. Right. I didn't have anything to do with that. Then you should have got on board early. You're right. Where the hell were you when we were looking at this dead woman's body? Right. Sitting around jerking off in New York. We were trying to find the truth. Damn. Yeah, I was in high school. And then go and see. And then go come. Well, you want ought to go your ass back. I'm tired of you goddamn picking at me. Well, if we could keep going straight forward, you'll be out of here sooner than later. So I'm going to go back to what you said before. Go ahead. And remind you, get it over with. I'm tired of this crap. I don't care if they put him to death. I don't care if you put a statue up to me. If you put a statue up to him, I'm out of this. Let me go. Y'all do whatever the hell you want. I'm not in it anymore. Unfortunately, some of the case, cut him loose then. Right. If I have to do time for this man to be punished for his crime, I say cut him loose. I'm tired of being punished. Jeez, what? You punished? You're still enjoying your freedom, jerk. Oh my God, he's something else. Okay, anyways. Right then, did you know that the only physical evidence in this case is the bite mark comparison? It might be, I don't know. And you wouldn't want to bet a man's life on, you wouldn't want to bet a man's life on bite mark comparison of evidence, right? There's innocent people that go to jail every day, and guilty guys that walk every day. I can't solve the problem. I can't fix the system. The whole system is broke. And you wouldn't want to bet a man's life on bite mark comparison. I don't bet a man's lives. I don't bet on man's lives. Right. I'm saying you wouldn't want to. I don't bet on man's lives. Right, because you say that. I'm not an executioner. I'm a part. The people you're mad at is the jury. Go after the jury. Oh man, this guy is desperate to put the blame anywhere but him. Two men spent nearly 20 years in prison because of West. One was nearly executed. Others still wait on death row, but West wants us to know the real victim in all of this is Michael West. And we haven't even reached the best parts yet. Here, he lobs another childish insult at Fabricant. The only small point that I was trying to make is that at the second trial, when you testified, you didn't use indeed without a doubt. You used what was at that time the approved terminology. Okay. Is that fair? Okay. When you say okay, I have trouble understanding what you mean by that. Okay, I agree. Thank you, asswipe. Jesus. In another exchange, West managed to both insult Fabricant and attest to his own glory after objecting to Fabricant referring to some of his cases as controversial. West interjected, "They're all controversial. I've always been aware that there's usually a young lady sitting next to me writing everything down that I say. And 100 years from now, there will be idiots like you two sitting down discussing what I said today." Oh, jeez.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it won't be idiots looking down, but you'll be the idiot when this stuff gets looked at. Anyway, Fabricant also asked West about Levon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer. To this day, West still insists both men are guilty. Forget the DNA tests or that another man has confessed to both crimes. West still maintains that he only testified that Brooks and Brewer bit their respective victims. If someone else did the actual raping and killing of the girls, West argues, that isn't on him. They're still guilty. They must have held the girls down and bit them while Johnson raped and killed them. In his 2007 confession, Justin Albert Johnson said he committed both assaults and murders alone. In the April deposition, West slandered Brooks yet again. I've often speculated that Mr. Brooks didn't supply didn't supply this child for sex with Mr. Johnson in trade for money or drugs. How? You know? How is it that he had this child after midnight, and the next time we find her, she's dead and she's got Mr. Johnson's DNA in her vagina? Not on the bite marks, but on her vagina. And I'm going, I think Levon held this little girl while he raped her. Right. But you weren't there, right? But his semen was in her vagina and Levon Brooks' teeth were on her body. Right. So that was two people assaulting this girl. And you did that match using two front teeth, right? Those were, I think that was the tooth. that had the unique wear and tear that showed up in the bite mark very, very well. At this point, even the state of Mississippi has acknowledged the innocence of Brooks and Brewer. Both men have been formally exonerated and compensated under the state's wrongful conviction law. Only West still clings to their guilt. In both cases, West claimed to match the men to bite marks using only their upper teeth, since we use bite with bot.
Both.
Since we usually bite with both upper and lower teeth, that always seemed odd and suspicious. Fabricant asked West about that at deposition and got another interesting response. That's funny. Y'all like to see on that. West said, using a vulgar term for ejaculate. He then explained, in '86 we did a bite mark survey in the Abfo in Vegas. We had stone models on vice grips, and I remember we pulled Dick Silveron's belly and bit him, and only one arch showed, a partial bite mark arch. It happens. You don't always get both sets. In other words, West is saying his testimony was sound because at conference 30 years ago, he and some fellow bite mark analysts used vice clamps to bite one of their colleagues on the belly. Right. Yeah, so quite the definitive proof. Anyway, here's another exchange involving Fabricant and a prosecutor from the Attorney General's office and West. Mr. Fabricant, so let's just move on. I'm staying relevant here, and I'm staying in the transcript, and I'm trying to save us all some time. Mr. White, well, hurry up. Mr. Fabricant, this is a death penalty case. Are you aware of that? I have been doing death penalty cases for 40 years. Well, then let's not be in a big hurry. Well, you are. 20 years and they ain't executed him. Come on, Christ. The state don't need to execute people if it takes them 20 years to make a decision. Mr. Fabricant, this case, the Eddie Lee Howard case, we've got to get him out. He needs to kill some more women. Oh, jeez. Hey, jeez. This guy. Yep. A few months later, West cracks a joke. Right. And you were asked to bring documents to this deposition. Couldn't find them. Did you look? Yeah. Where did you look? Dresser. In your dresser? Witness nods head affirmatively. You keep records in your dresser too? Sometimes, yeah. What kind of records do you have in your dresser? Beatles, Rolling Stones. Yeah, jeez. Minutes later, in another display of humor, West uses the accusation that he has actually created bite marks on victims to riff on Chris Fabricant's name. Unlike in this case, it was a dead person, and they used UV light on the dead person. Living is different from dead. I'll agree with you on that. Right. And the UV light that you talked about works on living people, not on dead ones. No, I believe it works on dead ones too. Not according to the literature, and you don't have anything to cite to. If you disagree with it, you disagree. If you disagree with it, disagree with it. Well, because I think you invented it, I think you invented this bite mark on this body. I don't think you saw. My name ain't fabrication. Yours is. Damn. Jeez. Quite the wit, that Michael West. Yeah. There's lots more like this, but here's the start of the exchange that ends the deposition. All right, Dr. West, do you have any Do you have any 25 questions? Do you have any 25 questions for me? How do you sleep at night? I sleep well. You're a sociopath. It's amazing to me that you don't that it's amazing to me they don't care what their clients do. They will do anything to get them off, no matter how heinous no matter how heinous murdering their clients are. Just to be clear, it is West here who is calling someone else a sociopath. He goes on. Let me follow up on that, Dr. West. Go ahead. Sociopath, that's a specific definition. That's a specific definition. Do you know what a sociopath is? Yeah. What is it? To me, that's someone who is out of touch with reality and has no empathy for the victims. They're driven by their own self needs. And you and I just met today, right? Well, yeah. So that's your, and you call me that. I think the moment we sat down, so that's your, how did you come to that conclusion? You're sitting next to a sociopath. You work for the Innocence Project. Every attorney I've met with the Innocence Project lies, cheats, steals, and tries to obfuscate the evidence in front of the court. I have no respect for y'all. I see. And so that makes me a sociopath. No, that makes you an asswipe. You make yourself a sociopath. Jeez. Well, I look forward to seeing you again, Dr. West, the witness. Well, don't be. F off. Are we dismissed? Yep. Thanks. Jeez. All right. It's worth noting that during the deposition, West also directly contradicted his trial testimony in the Howard case. The specifics would require too much background for this already long post. The April deposition was followed by a court hearing in May. The trial court judge has yet to rule on whether West's testimony should have been admitted at trial. He could uphold West's testimony, bar it, and grant Howard a new trial without West, or less likely, dismiss the charges against Howard entirely. Oh my God, it keeps going. In a post tomorrow, I'll look at the role of Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood plays in all of this. It is Hood's office that continues to defend this conviction, as well as the convictions in countless other cases involving Hayne and West, or both. Hood's actions after this deposition in particular are pretty amazing. That's it.
That's it. And there's just a bit about Radley.
Right, the author of the article. So there you go. All right. So that was it. That's it there. That's interesting stuff, Looking at what those two are getting away with, and that, the state of Mississippi is going to let it go because they don't, people are wondering, how could what happened in Wisconsin happen? Oh, the state wouldn't do that. They wouldn't, just go along with reconvicting Stephen Avery if it wasn't. Bull. I see it over and over again. Massachusetts with the How to Fix a Drug scandal, where the states see a problem, see where they've screwed up, and they are clearly, many agents of that state are working to continue to cover it up. And so you can't tell me that it doesn't happen, because we're seeing it over and over again. And
yeah, I mean, there's certain similarities, I think, between Ken Kratz and Michael West.
Definitely. The way that the way that you heard the guy in the article bring it up, where he will like badger his questioner.
Yes.
Remember what it was like when that guy was challenging Kratz with the sexting stuff, and the way that Kratz kept coming back at him. Oh, you're a tool, Aaron.
Yeah.
You're just a tool being used by whoever, and all that. And he was just constantly kept trying to turn it around on him. And I got the very same impression about Mike.
Ryan Foley.
Yeah, fully. Yeah,
fully. And yeah, it's a shame really, because these aren't, in many ways, they're not stupid people.
right.
You know, I mean, that guy West has made a niche for himself, a market niche. I'm sure he did very well for himself. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
You know, I mean, just to have a look at that one case that was the con, that was the sting. They had to send him the
Right.
$750 just to look at the case and just to do his little video.
Right.
Come back and say, "Oh yes, it's a match," when in fact it was a sting operation and it was the investigators' own teeth.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yep. I mean, they're making a mockery of him. Obviously, his science is bull. You know,
Absolutely.
only he can perform. I mean, there's just a lot of things about that he says that should have been sending off red flags for people. You know, but whatever, for whatever reason.
I can't see any questions about that. Can you?
No.
Have we sent them all to sleep? Because that's where I'm heading next.
Yeah.
Because you've
right.
worn yourself out reading through all that lot.
Right. How long have we been reading? For an hour and a freaking half? Holy Christ. All right.
Not me. I haven't been reading.
I know.
Should have done the reading. In fact, what happened was you said to me, "Are you all right there?" And what was funny was that just after that, my screen went blank.
Right. Oh, right.
And so I had to leave StreamYard and come back in, and I noticed you've changed my name for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Right on.
You're so subtle.
So thank you very much, Sharon, for the donation to the Dr. Pepper Fund. You know, thank you very much for that. You know, it's much appreciated because Eric Jose drinks a lot of Dr. Pepper.
He does indeed.
You know, and it costs money. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you know,
so what have you got on tomorrow?
Paul?
Yeah, what have you got on tomorrow? It's always a pleasure.
I'm gonna be on tomorrow with Jane and Diane.
Excellent.
Over on their new channel, and I have, I don't know when, but I have the segment with Dan Davies from my closing segment of Marathon. I have that ready.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll get a chat with Mr. Bellin maybe next week.
Yeah,
he couldn't do it tomorrow because today here, but because it would be Mothering Sunday, because you have a different day to what we have in the UK.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who gave you permission to change the day?
Permission for what?
Right, catch you later.
Yeah, man. We'll see you.
It's goodbye from me.
And that's goodbye from him.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.